Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Google Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and for those who don't know, we're all about bringing science, adventure, and conservation into classrooms throughout North America and hopefully beyond. Very excited to welcome our guest today. We have Leonard joining us today. And Brendan's a freelance writer. He's a rock climber and adventurer. And his writing centers around his adventure and his travel, but also human experience involved in both. So he's a contributing editor at Climbing and Adventure Journal. His stories have appeared in magazines like Backpacker, National Geographic Adventure, Outside, and the Men's Journal. A few little things he's done. 2010, he bicycled across the U.S. In 2011, he decided to take a little road trip, so hopped in his car and went off to hike and climb in various areas. Changed venue from his car to a van, and did that for about 3 years, living out of his van, heading around the West, climbing, exploring, and writing the whole way along. So a book did come out of that trip, the new American Road Trip Mixtape. And there's just this quote here from Brendan that I want to read. I really like this quote. He says, "I think we all need to spend more time doing things we love, going to the places that make us feel small, remembering to laugh at ourselves, and getting a little cold, tired, and scared every once in a while." So Brendan, great to have you joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, this is fun. Yeah, should I just talk about what I do?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and
Okay.
yeah.
So I guess growing up, I wanted to be a writer. So in school, I wrote for the student newspapers and stuff. I had a column in my seventh grade middle school newspaper. That was my first writing gig. And I wrote about things that I thought were funny in school, and it was a very early indication what I was going to do for a living. And I went through high school and college, and I didn't really know how somebody was to become a writer. I didn't actually figure it out until I was, I think, 31. But I've been doing it for, I guess, full time for four years now, writing about nothing but the outdoors and adventure, which is a fun thing. And as you can see, this is my office. I work from my house a lot of the time. That's where I do a lot of writing. And I live in Denver, Colorado, in the U.S. And what I do, I guess the way I've found a way to make a living is to go on adventures and write about them, and to gain lots of experience doing fun things like climbing mountains or rafting the Colorado River. And it's not the best paying job. I could have picked a lot of things where I would have made more money, but it's way more fun than working. I don't have to go into an office. I don't have a boss, so I kind of try to sell things to a bunch of different people. I'll tell a magazine, hey, I want to go do this trip where I ride my bike around Norway for 2 weeks, and I'll write a story and take photos while I'm there, and they'll pay me to do that. There's a lot more work that's not as fun, where I'm just sitting in front of a computer for days and days and days, writing and writing and writing. And I just finished a book project that I don't know how much typing you guys do, but I just finished, and it was 92,000 words, which is about 250 single-spaced pages in Microsoft Word if you type, which is an enormous thing. And I did not get to leave my house much for that, but instead, what I did was draw from the experiences that I've had traveling and camping and backpacking and kayaking and climbing and all those things to write this book. But there is a lot of time sitting in front of a computer, like everybody does too much of these days. So it's not all that glamorous. But I can tell you a little bit. I'll try to show you some of the stuff I've done if I can get this screen share to work again. Okay. Okay, that looks like it's working. I'll show you a couple magazine articles I've done. I can't get this one. I think you guys can see that.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. I couldn't figure out how to get this 2-page photo to show up, but this is a trip my girlfriend and I did this summer where we went to Norway up north of the Arctic Circle, and there's a chain of islands up there called the Lofoten Islands, and we bicycled about 300 miles across them, and you have to ride your bike across bridges, through tunnels a few times, and then take ferry boats in between the islands. But they're way far north of the Arctic Circle, so it's light out for 24 hours every day. So there's no night. So we would ride our bikes. We had, really we could ride anytime we wanted to because it never got dark. So a lot of days we would sleep in until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, wake up, eat breakfast, and then bicycle until 1 or 2 in the morning. It kind of messed with our internal clocks a little bit, but really fun time. And I was able to write about it for this magazine, Adventure Cyclist. And this is the story that came out of it. I really wish this photo would show up, but and 2 pages, but it's not going to. And I've done a couple. Here, this is a good one. Here we go. Okay. This was a story I wrote for Climbing Magazine. A few years ago, I had a college student contact me and say that he was looking for someone to kind of mentor him in the how to write adventure stories for magazines. And I said, sure, I can help you with that. I know a little bit about that. And we kind of became close friends. He lived in Zion. He lived in southern Utah in Zion National Park, which is this canyon with these 2,000-foot sheer sandstone walls. And I'd always visited there, but never climbed on the walls. And this young guy, Ethan, knew how. And I said, sure, I'll teach you how to write if you eventually will just take me climbing on one of these big walls. And it's one of those things where you sleep on a little ledge. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse here, but you take this tube up with you, and it rolls out into a sleeping ledge, and you hook it to the wall. And in this photo, we're about, I think, 600 feet above the ground, just hanging by these little straps. And we decided that we thought we could fit 3 people on this little ledge that was designed for 2 people. So it was not the most comfortable night of sleep I've ever had, but we're hanging above, there's nothing but 600 feet of air underneath you. And we didn't want to cook dinner, so we just got a pizza from the pizza restaurant in town and carried that up with us. So in this photo, I think we're eating pizza, watching the stars come out. But Ethan, as you can see, these are pretty sheer sandstone walls. So I was able to get something out of that experience too, to learn how to climb these really, really steep walls in this place I'd gone to many, many times before. And Ethan just had an article published in a really big mountain climbing magazine about Zion National Park, and that was really satisfying for me that he was able to learn enough from me that he was able to get that published. This is my personal website. I don't know if you guys can see this. I kind of write about whatever I want every week. A lot of times it's just really funny things that I've noticed about people in the adventure world, or people who like to go camping, or people who like to go hiking, or bicycling, or things like that. And I've been able to turn that into a kind of a part-time job by getting a shoe company and an apparel company to sponsor me. So they give me a certain amount of money every year, and I guarantee that I'm going to get a certain amount of people to read the website. So every week I have to come up with something new. And like a lot of you guys who probably wait until the last minute to do your homework, I put something up every Thursday. I put a new story up every Thursday, and I still haven't written it. It's Wednesday at 9 a.m. So I'm a little nervous today that I need to think of something pretty quick and have it be really good by tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. But I don't always do that. I usually try to do it a few days in advance, so I'm not worried about it, and I can actually sleep the night before. But this week was a tough week, so I didn't. Here's another. I don't know if you guys are familiar with National Geographic, but I write a little bit for their website. I wrote about a guy who. This is the last time I wrote for him was about a year ago, I guess. But I wrote about a guy who I interviewed. This guy. You guys know the highest mountain in North America, Mount McKinley or Denali, which is in Alaska. It's only a few feet higher than the highest mountain in Canada, but it is a few feet higher. So this guy was just he's a pretty normal guy from Minnesota, but he's done a lot of exploring around the South and North Poles, and he decided he wanted to climb Mount McKinley by himself in winter. And I believe this was his third or fourth attempt, but he would just go, and he built these skis out of a tree in his backyard in Minnesota. He cut down the tree and built these 8-foot-long skis so he could ski across glaciers and not fall into a crevasse, which is a big crack in the glaciers sometimes you can't see. But he just went camping by himself and waited for the weather to clear until it was clear enough to climb it. And when I talked to him, he was still at his base camp, so he's still out there freezing in January. And I talked to him on a satellite phone, and I said, well, what are you going to do next, now that you've done this big climb? And he said, all I can think about now is wearing flip-flops and gardening in my house back in Minnesota. So he had, very normal guy though, very, very cool guy, just stuck with it and decided he was going to climb this mountain and was able to do it. Well, hopefully this will come up. Sorry, my computer's a little slow for some reason today. Well, anyway, I'm trying to get these photos. I'll try to get these photos to come up. In 2013, I was invited to go on a raft trip through the Grand Canyon, which is it's 280 miles on the river, and people take anywhere from about 10 days to ride a raft through all these rapids. 28 days. So we were there in winter, in November and December. So you ride the raft. You ride on the raft in between rapids, and you have all your stuff with you, and then you camp on these little beaches that are in the Grand Canyon, like on the sides of the river. And it was one of the longest trips I've been on, and we were still in the United States, but you're in a place where you don't have any sort of cell phone reception, so you can't talk to anyone the entire time you're down there. This is a photo of me climbing a boulder that's in the river. You can just pull over and do a little rock climbing sometimes. The interesting thing about the Grand Canyon is it's about 4,400 feet deep from the top to the bottom, and the river runs through the bottom of it. And if you have an accident and someone gets injured, here's some rafts with all our stuff on them. They kind of look like they're not very organized, and they look like everything's just kind of strapped in there, but they are very organized. You have to have your stuff, figured out if you're going to be down there for 28 days. You can't be constantly searching for your peanut butter or your toothbrush, or the rescue rope if you have to throw it to someone. But if you need to call for a rescue, if you need help, if someone breaks their leg down there, or someone has a heart attack or something, you actually use a radio to call a passing airplane. So like a plane full of people. There's so many planes that go over the Grand Canyon. They're way high up. They're 15,000 to 30,000 feet above the ground, but you have the best chance of getting in contact with them by doing that. So you call, and the person who answers the call is someone who is a pilot for United Airlines or Delta or someone, and you say, hi, we're on a Grand Canyon raft trip. We're at mile 124 in the Grand Canyon. We've had an accident. We need a helicopter evacuation. And the person on the plane actually calls the National Park Service and says, we just got a message from these people. They need help. Here's where they are. And then the National Park Service will send down a helicopter. Thankfully, that doesn't happen very often. But that's what happens when you do that. And sorry, this browser's not. There it is. This is my first book. I wrote a book. I wrote a long. It's like a really long paper you write for school, about 150 to 200 pages on a word processing document in a computer. I had moved out of my apartment into a van, into a car in 2011, and it was just a time in my life where I decided I was working from home, and I figured, there's internet access all over the country. Maybe I could just work from, coffee shops, and I'd go to the library and hook up to their internet and work from there. So I did, and I thought I'd leave at my house in Denver. I moved out of it and moved into my car and put some stuff in a storage unit, and drove around the western United States. And I was having fun, so I just kept doing it for about 6 months. And after about 6 months, I decided that my car was a little small, so I should buy a van. So I did that, and I kept doing it for almost 3 years. And this book was the beginning of that trip, where I was kind of realizing how much fun it is to just pack your stuff up and not have any central location. It was like if you went to go see a friend or your grandmother or your aunt and uncle, but you could just keep doing it. And once you left your one aunt and uncle's house, you could go to your other aunt and uncle's house, and go see friends in a different city. So I wrote this book, and I decided to publish it myself, which was a pretty easy thing, which is kind of fascinating. Like nowadays, if you want to write a book, one in a few days of work, and this was a good experience I'd had with that, and it sold about 5,000 copies throughout the world, thanks to the wonders of the internet. People can purchase it online, and I have a new book coming out in May, and this is the book. This is with a real publisher, so I'm going to see how that goes. It's different to work with a publisher because they have their idea of what they want the book to look like, and where the story is going to go, and you have your own idea, and you'll say, oh, well, I do want to mention my mom in this part of the story, and they say, oh, well, we don't think that really has much, that's not the real story here, and you kind of have to come to an agreement there. And even the photo that was on the cover of the book was a thing that I had to work out with them. They wanted a photo of a guy who looked much older than me. I didn't think it was representative of what was in the book. The story is about a young man who's in his 20s and early 30s, and I didn't like the cover photo, so we went back and forth and finally worked it out so that this photo appeared on the cover, which is a photo a friend took of me on Devil's Tower while rock climbing. I think so. What I'm doing, I guess let me get away from this screen share. I don't have a lot of what you'd call typical days. I do a lot of different things every day. I'm going to try to show you my kitchen table here. Right now, I'm trying to plan a bicycle trip around Utah, and we leave in 11 days, and I haven't figured out where all the water is that we need. We're going to be on bicycles, so we need to find drinking water. So you'll just find a pond or a creek and collect water out of the pond or creek and filter it and drink it. And it's in one of the driest, areas of the country, so it's kind of difficult. So I am basically I should have planned this like weeks or months ago. But now I'm kind of scrambling and going, okay, boy, this may not work. But I have to still. One of the things I have to do for work is to go shopping for all the food we're going to eat and ship. I have to mail half of it to a friend who lives halfway through our route. But I just totaled up all our mileage last night and about 11 o'clock at night and said, wow, that's way too many miles. I don't know if we can actually do that in 10 days. So now I'm kind of refiguring out what our route is. And that's the next adventure for me. So now that I've sat and done, nothing but typing for the last month, I have to go ride my bike 50 or 60 miles a day for 10 days. So, but like I tell my dad, it beats most of the regular jobs I've had. So, yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of an interest. That's kind of my life at this point. And it's a really fun way to make a living. That I don't have any one boss, but I report to a lot of different people and can try to create things. So I've had a lot of fun doing it. Should we do questions?
Right.
Now,
Yeah, absolutely. So, just going to get an interruption for just a moment.
Sure.
An announcement on my end. The fun of being in a school. Huh.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. So, Brennan, just before we snag some questions from the classrooms, clearly you've been to a lot of really cool places, some pretty cool adventures. I want to ask you about one in particular, your bike ride across the U.S. Can you tell us maybe just briefly a little bit about the good and the bad of kind of hopping on a bike and just launching out there for a trip like across the United States?
Yeah. I think it's the best way to travel because instead of sitting in a car not burning calories, you're pedaling every mile you have to go to get somewhere. So they say, I think typically if you're not exercising a lot, you burn 2,000 calories in a day, and we calculated that we were burning 8,000 to 10,000 calories a day. So I could eat as much as I wanted every meal. So I would a lot of times go into a restaurant and order 2 full breakfast meals and sit down and eat them all, and then go ride my bike 50 or 60 miles. And it also, one of the great things about riding a bike is that every time you stop, people like to talk to you about it because you're kind of this interesting but harmless person who they're curious about, as opposed to someone who's driving a car or riding in a bus or something like that. So we rode from California to Florida, which is actually the shortest way across the country. And that was 2010, and it was a good friend of mine from high school. We actually went to high school together and played on the basketball team together and worked in a restaurant together, and he's now a successful chiropractor and entrepreneur, and he paid for the entire trip, which is really great for me. The worst part, I think, is some days you just don't have. Some days, it's going to rain on you all day, and you really don't have a choice. I mean, you can stop if you want to, but it's probably going to rain tomorrow, or maybe you just ride through it. And one day we had, when the wind blows at you into your face on a bicycle, it really slows down how fast you can ride. And it's wonderful when it's blowing from behind. You feel like you feel like you're on a sailboat. But one day we were out of food. We had hardly any food with us, and I think it was 55 miles to the next town, and the wind was blowing about 30 miles an hour in our faces, and we had to make it. And typically we would ride about 11 miles an hour on a normal day, and this day it took us. Our average speed was 5 miles an hour, so we rode for 11 straight hours. And you can pretty much, I guess I can run about 5 miles an hour, so it felt really ridiculous to be riding a bike that slowly. But we just kept at it, and finally we arrived at the town in the dark. It had gotten dark by this time, and the wind finally died down when the sun went down. We checked into a hotel room and ordered 3 large pizzas and ate all of them. But that's the worst thing about it, I guess, is the weather. You're just never going to get, some days it's just not your day. It took us 49 days to ride across the U.S. and but we pedaled 45 of those days. So you're not going to have 45 sunny days. So whenever there's wind and rain, you just go out in it. You just deal with it. So yeah.
All right. Well, Brendan, let me introduce the classes joining us today. Let's see. Our first group. Well, we've got my classroom joining us today. This is grade 6-7 class. We're in Guelph, Ontario.
All right.
Guys. And then we have another class joining us in Toronto. They're about an hour away from us in Ontario. But they had their bus is canceled because of snow, so it's a smaller group today. You guys want to give a shout out, Mrs. McLaren's group?
Hey.
Hi, guys.
A couple who had to come to school today. And then we've got grade 2s joining us. Mrs. Siemens' class, let me turn on their mic. How's it going, guys? All right. Let's get started with our grade 2s. They're joining us from Kansas City. And they've actually sent me a question already. They typed one in. They were wondering if you'd ever been to Africa before.
I have not, but I want to go. I want to go see the baobab trees in Madagascar. If you guys have ever seen a photo of those, they look like somebody drew them, like it's a cartoon. So I want to go. I've only been to Europe and Mexico outside of the U.S. So I've been to Europe a lot of times, and it's wonderful. But I want to go see some other parts of the world too.
Nice.
All right. Do the grade 2s have another question or two for Brendan?
Yeah, we have one more.
What is it like living in nature or being in nature?
I think it's wonderful. I think we have a lot of things that distract us from, I guess, being outdoors, and there's a lot of things that are healthy about being outdoors. I don't know if you guys. A lot of people have phones and computers that they're always looking at, or televisions, and to go outside and feel the wind on your face and to get hot and cold and try to go find your own water and cook and live very minimally is a very refreshing thing, I think. And I think people need more of it. And I've been challenged more by the things I've done in the outdoors. And it's taught me a lot about how to deal with life when I'm back indoors and not in nature. You learn how to be tough when you're climbing mountains, and like when you're tired, you keep going, and you get this sort of conviction. And then once you do these tough, big, scary things, when you come back to do normal things in real life, they're not as scary. You think, well, I climbed that mountain, I can stand up to this person when they're trying to do something that's disrespectful or when they're trying to. Yeah, thank you.
I think for the classrooms is, so writing sometimes isn't someone's favorite thing to do. So what is it about writing that you find so interesting? What makes writing interesting for you?
I think it's a good way to relate to people. It's given me, how would I say this? It's helped me meet a lot of people just by writing down what's in my head or the way I see a certain thing, or it's the way I explain things has people have related to it and reached out to me. And I'm not a famous writer or anything. I've just had a few dozen or a couple hundred people email me or call me, or I meet them in person. They say, hey, this one thing you wrote really meant something to me, or I really identified with this, or I found it funny, or it made me think of my grandmother, or something like that. So I've gotten to meet a lot of really cool people, and also not just writing what's in my own head. I've gotten to interview and meet a lot of really interesting people as well. So it gives you a reason to talk to someone who is, kind of a hero, like a famous mountain climber who I would have, no other reason to talk to. I can email them and call them and say, hey, I'd like to interview you for a story for this magazine, and I get to spend, half hour or an hour talking to them, which is a really interesting thing. But I like it because it allows me to communicate with way more people than if I just if I didn't write. I've gotten to communicate with hundreds or thousands of people because of it. So I think that's the best part. But I understand that it's not people's favorite thing to do, because it's not my favorite thing to do some days either. So.
Okay, here's Peyton joining from my class. She has a question for you.
Hi, Peyton.
How long did it take the publisher to publish your book?
Boy, it takes a long time. The biggest step is trying to convince them that your book is something that would be worth them publishing. And once you do that, let's see, I think it's taken over probably about 1.5 years from when I first started talking to a publisher until I will actually have the book in my hand. And that's because they need to work out, I think I worked with 3 different editors. So one of them reads it and looks at just the big picture things. And then another one reads it and they do what's called fact checking, because it's nonfiction. And they say, oh, we think, you wrote that this mountain is 1,900 or 12,686 feet, and we found somewhere on the internet it says it's 12,586 feet. Which one's true? And so you have to go through all of it and say, this is true. Yes, here's my source for this. So that's also not very fun. And then a third person reads it just to find typographical errors. Like you spelled this person's name differently in this chapter than this one. Are you sure this is the right usage of this verb? So a lot of it's not that fun, but I'm very excited to see it actually in my hands in a few weeks here. But there's a thing now called self-publishing, which I've done, and I joke that I could make you a book this afternoon, which is true. You can do it if you draw. You can design your cover, and you can put a big a Word document, upload it to the internet, and I think 5 days later the company will ship you a book. So I've done it for friends, for gifts. I've taken my parents' vacation photos and put them into a book form for them, and so it's made a nice paperback book of their photos, and it looks like a real book, and I've paid for it and given it to them for Christmas. So that's a fascinating thing. But yeah, working with publishers is a lot slower because everybody has their idea of what the final book should look like. So good question.
All right, here comes Mackenzie.
Hi.
Hi, Mackenzie.
What made you let go of your van?
What made me let go of it?
What made you let go of your van?
Oh, I still have it. I just don't live in it anymore. So I just got kind of, I got a little tired of it. You're homeless, so you never really have a place to go. So you're kind of always, I guess, borrowing from other people in a sense. Like when you want to work, you have to sit in someone else's property, like a coffee shop or a library or whatever. And now I use it for work assignments that I do. I use it to drive places, and I'll sleep in it or camp out of it for 5 or 6 days to do a job. But I'm pretty. I think maybe I'm getting a little old. I would just like to make my own coffee sometimes and sleep in and things like that. So, but I still have it. It's not worth a lot of money at this point, but it's a memory, and it's still useful. But I definitely don't want to live in it anymore. So.
All right. Mrs. McLaren's group, I know some of your gang joined later, but is there a question or two from your group?
There is. Come on up. You can look right here.
I'm a bit of a writer too, and I just wanted to know, how do you deal with writer's block?
Oh, there's a famous there's a movie line where a writer says to another writer, "I don't believe in writer's block," and I don't usually have a problem. I think you have like idea block where you can't think of the right thing, but I usually just start writing, and I try to get one really good sentence about what I want to write about, and it usually just comes from there. And I think if you write that first really good sentence and it's really good, then everything that follows it is easy. Do you have it a lot when you're trying to do assignments?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes I'll walk around my apartment. Sometimes I'll go for a walk around the block, or I'll go for a run, and usually that helps everything. It's actually there's studies about brain chemistry that if you just sit in front of your computer and try, it doesn't come. But if you move around a little bit, if you go run up and down the stairs or do some push-ups or something, then your brain chemistry actually changes, and you're able to come up with some ideas, and your thinking it changes. So I guess that's how I would deal with it. I may need to go for a run for about an hour today just to think of something to write for my blog tomorrow. But I usually just have faith it'll happen, and it usually does. And sometimes it's like a really great piece of writing, and sometimes it's like just good enough. So some days it's a B-, and some days it's A+, but I'll take the B- days too.
All right. Let's see if there's maybe one more question.
What type of equipment did you use?
For vacuuming? Like what brand?
Yeah.
Or I usually use Black Diamond equipment because I have friends there and I don't have to pay full price for it. But yeah, rock climbing takes a lot of equipment sometimes, and I have just boxes of it. I'm just not sure I need it all the time. But yeah.
Okay, well, it looks like we do have someone who joined in. Ginger, are you there? Can you hear me? Oh, maybe your mic's not working. That's okay. Are you maybe Miss Simmons' daughter? Yeah? Okay. I was just checking to see if maybe you had a question for Brendan. But I can't hear you with your mic. But if you do want to send a question, you can type one in the chat sidebar if you do want to send something.
Okay.
Brendan, maybe just to wrap up today, there's a picture that I want to share that has a really neat quote of yours, and maybe you can address this just as kind of a final thought for the classes today. So let me just share my screen and load this picture. All right. So it says, you can probably see it now, unconventional living presents ordinary people with extraordinary opportunities. So there's the picture. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that to kind of wrap things up today?
Yeah, I think, gosh, I'm trying to remember what I was saying. That was somebody interviewed me. But yeah, I think that in order to have opportunities to do adventurous things, you have to get a little outside of what is considered normal, I guess, in our society. You can't make all the safe choices and always try to take care of everything that you think will keep you safe and secure. You kind of have to do things that scare you, and whether that's leaving your house, moving far away, going to a different country, you have to do things that you're unsure of a lot of times. And I think of a quote, a famous climber who just passed away, but he said he always tried to go in the direction of his fear. So he would look at what he was scared of and do something that he thought would help him deal with that. If he was scared of, well, he actually did a lot of dangerous things, but I think that's a good lesson for everybody. You know, like, well, why am I scared of this thing? You know, why? Oh, it's because I think that, you know, I'm not sure about the people who live in this country, or I'm not sure about the safety there. Maybe you should go there and find out. That's what adventure is all about, is doing things you're completely unsure of, and figuring out how you deal with them. And right now I have to find some water in the desert in Moab, or in Utah, and I'm unsure that we're going to be able to do this, but we will do it in some fashion. I don't think we're going to like die of thirst. We may spend some days riding bicycles with 4 gallons of water apiece on our bicycles, but we'll do it somehow. But yeah, I think that's kind of what my takeaway from that is that you do things you're scared of, and that's how you grow.
All right. Well, that's great advice. I agree with that 100%. Because if you don't challenge yourself, you're not really doing anything new. You're not really going anywhere. So I think that's something students should do with their writing as well, is challenge themselves to write about a new topic, or you know, write something about their passion, then share that work. Because a lot of people will write, but they won't share that work afterwards. So
yeah, that's the best part to me, getting over the fear of sharing it.
All right. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it sounds like you have a busy day ahead of you with a post to do for tomorrow and water to find in Utah. So thanks so much. Good luck with your trip. When you do have a moment, if you don't mind sending me a link to a few of those articles, and I can pass those on to the classrooms, and they can check out a couple of them later as well. Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. This has been great. That was great to have you. I'm going to turn the mics on so the classrooms can say goodbye and thank you. And yeah, good luck in Utah. Thanks so much. Bye, guys. Thanks. All right, Brendan, thanks so much. We're signing off for today. Okay, thanks.